and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today, and a special welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. We have another person here today. We're, as mentioned previously, we're extending our celebration, our 4-year anniversary celebration, because I wanted to highlight it by having people on the show. So we've got another person on the show today, another person, a stalwart in the industry. I think we met in 2015. If I remember correctly, at the UX Strategy Summit in San Francisco, we met and we've been talking about UX and supporting each other ever since, and following this person's travels. They've been following mine. But I really love people in the discipline that have a heart for the discipline, that care about the discipline and not here to make a name for themselves and do all that other crazy stuff that you see people doing these days, but somebody who understands the game, knows how the game operates, and really values UX and presents it the way it's supposed to be presented. I love what this person does for the discipline. And as always, we let the person, I'll introduce the person, but I will let them tell you about themselves. Joining with me today on the show, the director of the American Board of Design and Research, the one, the only Jonathan Bowman. Welcome, Jonathan, to the show. Go ahead and take it away, sir, and let everybody know who you are.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for the awesome intro. I feel like I'm like on the big time Johnny Carson night show or something like that. Thank you for the intro. That's really, really, really awesome. What a warm welcome. And it's great to be here on the show. I know we've been talking about this for some time now, so I'm glad the day is finally here. And we get to do some catching up and talking a little bit about a few things here and there. And yeah, for the folks that are listening and don't know me, Darren's awesome. All praise should go to him especially for putting this together. But he has inspired not only me, not only this company, the American Board of Design and Research, but a lot of the efforts that we are putting forth out there for the community. So yeah, big props to you, Darren. And as far as me and who I am, I'll start the whole story because I think it's a lot more interesting than like a smaller version of the story. But basically, I grew up hanging out at the heels of my dad, who was a hardware designer. And back then, hardware design meant many different things, but he would literally use drafting tape to build out computer chips. Wow. And so growing up like that and in that environment, in a very computer-centric environment, you can imagine that I had sort of an advantage, right, in becoming UX designer in the UX field. So I was very fortunate in that respect. Summers for me were not spent doing cool, fun things that I wanted to do, at least not always. Summers for us were, or at least for me, my other two siblings had other specific duties, but I was hanging out on the computer drawing. So I had a big time head start, and I give a lot of props to my dad for that, because if I didn't have that sort of upbringing and that tutelage, design wouldn't have been something I gravitated towards. Mm-hmm. So if you want to look at the breadth of like how many years, it's not really fair to say because I kind of lived it growing up. But to kind of nail it down, I did get my official start in the late 90s. So somewhere around 97 to 99, I was introduced to tech working at a company in Irvine called GX Planet, where back in the day, if you remember, magazines were all the rage and online magazines were all the rage, right? So we were building flash-based websites that were magazines that like animated, had music. And then we got into building cartoons. And I directed and wrote and produced cartoons for that company as well. But something really weird and tragic happened. Like I was literally in the same building that Macromedia was in, by the way. They were next to me, and then down 2 doors was, I forget the name now, but they're Blizzard. Huh. So, so it was funny because it was Irvine, but there was like this Silicon Valley-ness to what we were doing down there. So that was many, many years ago. had a bit of a break of service where I wanted to try my luck at the medical field, but came back to UX sometime in 2011. And then the rest is history. So I mean, I have a long standing career of doing really cool things with really cool people in the field. And I love it. And that's why my heart is set on this next venture, which is focusing on helping people in the community do the right thing and get lots of good experience and grow.
Fantastic. So you told the audience who you are. You've told the audience how long you've been doing the work. What was the actual, I like to always refer to it as a light bulb moment. How did you actually make that conscious decision to invest yourself in the world of what we now know as UX? Of course, we didn't call it back then, but what was it that triggered it for you, where you realized this is where I belong, this is what I love? What was it that sort of sparked that for you?
That's a good question. I mean, there's definitely a lot of heartache. As you can understand, like when you're growing up, sometimes you're a bit rebellious. At least that was me. I didn't want to see myself doing the same thing my dad was doing or being in the same type of field. Granted, he was more of a hardware designer, but so I kind of noticed myself getting into design in the late 90s. The .com bust happened, which was really traumatic and crazy. So no one had a job at that time. So I kind of had this push and pull where like I didn't want to pursue that. And I vehemently tried to like do something entirely different, which led me to this 180 of going towards medicine. The cool thing though about medicine is I realized, you know what? I love helping people and I want to help people. So the connection there and the light bulb there was maybe I can help people with software. Maybe there's some way I can do that with experiences through using software and using applications. So I think that was the light bulb where I knew there was a draw towards it naturally. My dad knew because he would, have me sit down in front of his Apple computer and draw all summer and learn all sorts of crazy things. That made sense to me. I tried to rebel and not do it, but the sort of pull kind of came back like around 2011. I saw my time in the Navy kind of coming to an end because I was in the Navy for 10 years. And I said, you know what? Maybe I just go for it. Maybe I start a company, a digital sort of design firm and see where that goes. And, I didn't do too bad because I landed a DoD contract, which was cool, with Booz Allen and Deloitte. And you know how they get those contracts. So those folks ended up hiring me, taking a shot on me. And that was really inspiring because it was like, I do know this. I do understand this. I understand the discipline. I've worked long enough in it to have the skills. Now let me work on beefing those skills up. So 2011 was really kind of my sort of didactic, like master's class in understanding how to go from, a younger UX person to getting to the senior level.
Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff. Yeah. And then everybody, every show, everybody's story on how they got into UX is so markedly different. On one hand, they're close. On the other hand, it especially people who've been doing it for a while, because we all fell into it some kind of way. And I always reiterate, we didn't sit around like people today sitting there and then you're looking at options and you pick UX. That's not what happened.
No. And I can tell you the fall-in story too, if you want to hear that. No.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so falling into it, that is very true, and everyone I've met too is like the same situation. It's like funny. So, oh my gosh, this is going to kind of get into like stuff that's actually going to be taught like in history classes at some point, right? Because they used to have these things like called webmasters and stuff like that. I think, yeah. So I think really the falling into it was like. I was producing cartoons, and to get those cartoons pushed out, you had to actually push them out through the web, which was the only way people were going to start consuming things. And nobody believed them, but it turns out that that's kind of true today. It's very true. But so to go through the process of building things in ActionScript, that had to happen. So you're becoming a technical expert, learning ActionScript sort of coding language. Then, do people land on your website and then a song happens? Or do you have some sort of user experience built into it, right? So I started to notice like there's all these like things that you have to consider and pulling off this experience of me clicking on like a search, finding the cartoon that I want to watch, getting introduced to what the cartoon's about, and then actually watching and consuming it. And when you think about all those things, that's user experience, but we didn't call it that back then.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. So for those of you today, you're getting into UX today, you're thinking about being a UX person, you're becoming intrigued. Congrats that you're able to make that decision. but no, there's a whole host of us out there that simply was not the case at all. And I tell the story all the time about me being connected to a nonprofit, and everybody was running to get on the internet, and I was the go-to person at a lot of places that I worked at and a lot of companies I was associated with. And so they wanted, everybody else was going on the internet. They wanted to get on the internet. And it was all about brochureware at the time, but they wanted to get on the internet. So they turned to me and they asked me to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know enough. I'll figure it out. And I start doing things that I did not use the terminology. So I worked on the information architecture. I didn't know it was information architecture. I wanted to make sure it was intuitive. I didn't know about cognitive load, but I was examining it, and I didn't know anything about guerrilla testing, but I did guerrilla testing. So a lot of it to me was very commonsensical. But even more so than that, I found it to be fun. I found it to be intriguing. I found it to be fulfilling. I found it to be very intrinsically beneficial and satisfying, I should say. Definitely. To the point that I was going to go in the direction of, I was on my way to Boise State at one time before I was doing UX full time. I was on my way to Boise State to get a master's in instructional design. And I completely trashed that idea. I completely trashed it. And it was all about instructional design. And then I experienced some weird things over there. I need to get out of this field. This is crazy. Which I won't get into that because I'll go down a rabbit hole. But it was a really nice. That was when I made a decision. I had already fallen into it, but that's when I made a decision that this is definitely the direction I'm going to go. And right. I don't regret that, even though UX is upside down today. And we'll talk about that kind of stuff later in the episode. UX is upside down, but we didn't think that was going to be the case. But that's one of the reasons that I'm so invested and that I fight so much, because when instructional design became upside down, I wasn't invested. And I had an alternative, a very viable alternative, and that was to go, and back then we called it information architecture. I'm just going to do this information architecture thing. And we did that. So, but for those of you to have the opportunity, embrace the opportunity, go for it, do your absolute best, take advantage of your resources. Be warned, however, that there was no misinformation in UX prior to 2011, and now it's everywhere. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time helping people to cut through the muck and the mire of what's going on in UX, because just because somebody's offering you education in UX doesn't mean it's really education. And there's a lot of predatory stuff going on out there. So just sort of a little commercial, if you will. We're sort of plugging that in. Yeah, as
for
a
sure.
sidebar.
Be careful out there. And one thing I want to note too is, so I was mentioning back at this company, GX Planet, they're not a company anymore, but we needed articles because part of the whole premise was that it was an online magazine. And I think the real pivot point for me, or the real like eye opener for me was we had to go do shop-alongs to get these really cool stories to see like what young kids are into. For example, like, you know, if a young kid had $500, what kind of camcorder would they buy or something like that? Like that was one of the articles. And we'd literally give them a credit card and say, okay, let's film you the whole time, follow you, ask you questions, understand what you're going to buy. And this is essentially ethnographic work, field work. And that really served me well, because as I traverse through many, many different products that I help build and things like that, we always came back to like, you know, these really hot topic questions that execs are like, why aren't people like interested in buying our products? And I'd say, well, have we talked to the people? And the answer would always be no. So we would go sit there and talk to them and do shop-alongs with them, or do ethnographic work with them, go into their homes. And for Netgear, for example, we had to go check out their routers. We would literally say, where is your router? Well, this is why you think your router sucks, because it's hidden way back here inside of a closet. So, I think that was really the pivot point, was the ethnographic work I was doing really kind of lit the light bulb.
Yeah. Love ethnography. I love field work. It's interesting because I mean, for a hobby, I would back in the day, I would just go sit at the mall and just watch people. Just study people, not knowing what it was actually feeding into. And it was a foundation. I wanted to know how people think. I wanted to know why they did what they did, not knowing that what that was going to turn into and what it was actually awakening in a sense. For me, so it's always interesting hearing those commonalities amongst people that are in the field. These things that we all tend to have a sort of an appetite or a penchant for. So just interesting stuff. You mentioned wanting to make people their absolute best. You mentioned developing people, things on that line, which sort of helps us segue as we get into some of the more topical stuff we want to cover during the episode. And I mentioned, and I said director, he's actually the founder, not just the director, but Jonathan, folks, is the founder of the American Board of Design and Research. We call it AMBOD for short. I've mentioned AMBOD on the show before. So now you're mentioning the person behind AMBOD today. We're helping you to hear directly from this individual. And as much as I know as AMBOD, nobody knows as much as him. He is the guy. This is the person that has more to say. So we want to sort of delve into AMBOD a bit and help people in this episode to understand what AMBOD is, what it brings to the table, and help. I constantly, and he's heard me say this before, refer to AMBOD as a paradigm shift in the discipline. In a day where posers, retrofits, and upstarts, not only do they abound, but they're really calling the shots and determining our trajectory today. Should not be. So what we're trying to do with AMBOD, what Jonathan is trying to do, is help to sort of right that ship and to help provide some direction that for this discipline, that other disciplines actually came to the same point and they made a similar paradigm shift. So we want to get into this a little bit. I want to start off and ask Jonathan if he could share with the audience the story of AMBOD, what it is, how it came to be, its purpose, its value prop. You can go ahead and take the podium and go for it.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, that was really awesome. Again, you got to be careful with inflating my ego too much. It sounds a lot cooler on paper. Guys, I'm just a normal guy. No, really what it is and what we're doing. So we have all felt what Darren's talking about, and if you follow him on LinkedIn or anywhere, you'll hear him talk about some of these topics and issues. But we're sort of at this crossroads, right? We're at a place now where the most important thing for our communities and our fields and industry is to continue on and do the right thing, right? And have a community and have a legacy and establish infrastructure, right? But we don't have that right now. Like if you go down, Fifth Avenue today and ask someone on the street, hey, do you know what a UX designer does? You might get all sorts of different answers. So what the American Board of Design and Research is a licensure. We're not a certification. We don't give certificates. It's a license, kind of like a driver's license or how a doctor gets a license. And we basically want to, using Darren's words, right the ship, right? We basically want to go from where we are today with a lot of chaos and confusion and provide guide rails to help people understand clearly what it is we do, how we do it, and things like that. So yeah, the concept of the license is not different from any other one. If you're going to pass the bar and become a lawyer, for example, you would have to take an exam that shows you're competent or you have skills. And then you would then be licensed, right? So that's what the American Board of Design is and how it works.
Excellent. What is the proposed value? I mean, there was a day, and I always you've heard me before talk about how I liken, and I've talked about this on the show before too. I liken what we're doing from AMBOD's perspective with what was done. There was a day and time when people take a step back. There was a day and time when companies knew they needed accountants. And so you had all these people coming in trying to take care of a company's books. But a lot of people were claiming that they were capable, that they were qualified, that they had the acumen in order to handle a company's books, financial books. But what companies were finding out that these people were doing anything they could to get a job, and they were lying. They were falsifying their qualifications, and they get in, and then the end result of that, the consequences of hiring the wrong person, was that the books ended up not being managed well, and there was some great fallout. And so companies, because there was no governing body, I'm about to use the word that a lot of people hate, but they hate it because they don't study the word. There was no gatekeeping factor. And people don't like the word gatekeeping because a lot of posers, retrofits, and upstarts have actually trained people to hate that word. Gatekeeping is actually about quality control.
Yeah.
It's about quality advocacy. And it's funny how many people hate gatekeeping and how they fall into that, because the biggest gatekeeping organization in the world is ISO. They control all kinds of standards. And I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for gatekeepers, we would have a hard time withdrawing our money out of the bank.
Yeah.
But because they determine the size, the shape, the fact that our credit cards even have rounded edges, for God's sake, all of these things come from people that are trying to control quality. And then that trickles down to everybody who feeds into that. Back to the accounting story. Eventually, somebody said, we need to standardize this. We've got problems. We know this is a valid field, but we have all kinds of people out there, and some of these people really aren't qualified. They don't know what they're doing. They're falsifying their way, and companies are paying the price. We need to standardize. We need to regulate.
Right.
And that's really what AMBOD is trying to do, correct? Jonathan, would you say we're trying to regulate what we're doing? And you can take it from there to talk about the value prop a bit.
Sure. Yeah. And that is what we are doing. And so far we've seen some of the concerns, with those words. So we're not scared of them. If you want to call it gatekeeping or what have you, that's fine. That's not what we're here to argue. The value prop is, for example, today, you're not going to really be able to stand up for yourself in any sort of way if your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to do this thing. It's really unethical. It's so we can make more money. It'll increase the bottom line, but just go ahead and design some dark pattern, for example. And that really hurts, right? Because we're all good people and nobody wants to design a dark pattern. This is a gross, silly example and very hypothetical. But if you did do something like that, for example, what do you stand on? What are your principles? Where can you fall back on, right? Where is this sort of check and balance that you could push back on that in a professional way? You can't do that today. So the key factor, or one of the key factors with a license, is if I hire you as a licensed professional, there's a good chance I'm going to look into what the license is, what it means, and how it works. And if I don't, then I'll find out during this unethical conversation, at which point in time you could say, hey, this goes against my oath. I'm a licensed professional. I could lose my license for doing something like this. Now, yeah, that's a pretty, kind of out there example and sounds a bit arbitrary, but we've all been in situations like that, right? And we've all been in situations where it'd be nice to say, hey, look, I want to, but I can't. But then you have the other part of this scenario, which is, hey, look, I need a job. I need to get paid. I'm not going to risk saying no and getting fired. Well, that's what we do. And that's what our focus is to help you and help the community have something to fall back on. So if this does escalate, then we can come in and move in any way, we need to help you and protect you, right? You shouldn't get fired for doing the right thing.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure if we stepped in as an outside third party agency and contacted your employer with a lawyer, that attitude would change quickly. You'll get your job back and things are okay, right? You just won't have those projects. And yeah, maybe you'll have to find another job, but that's not the point. The point is, what you're getting now when you bring on a licensed practitioner, as opposed to today's mixed bag of, I could get somebody that really, like you said, was, fraudulent in explaining their skills and expertise. They get there, they don't do a good job. I have to let them go. And now I have to spend another $60,000 trying to find somebody else. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a bad churn. And I think that's why we're in this state that we're in today, because we're getting this bad rap, because the percentage of bad actors in a group of folks that, just want to do the right thing is so high and heavily saturated that it's kind of muddying the waters.
Big time. You just remind me of something that happened to me just today. I went to cancel a subscription for a newspaper subscription that I had. And I want to get out of there before the subscription. They had the thing where they offered me the deal to try to bait me in and lock me in. And I put it on my calendar, cancel subscription on July 6th. So I went in to do it. I went in to cancel the subscription. And I can't tell you how many times, I'm sure it's happened to you, a lot of you listening under the sound of my voice. You go to cancel. Some people, what I'm about to say, some people tie this to UX. Some people don't recognize it's connected. You go to sign up or you go to cancel and you can't.
Yeah.
Because they created, when you subscribed, you did not realize, and you won't realize it when you sign up, because you can't see how to cancel. They don't make it. I mean, sometimes out of curiosity, I'll go, how will it easily will it be for me to cancel? Okay, they got it there. Okay, they're transparent. They put it out there. So that means that they're not afraid to lose me. Right. And the companies that are more transparent offer a better brand experience from all the way across the board. They're not going to do that. This company, I went to log in and unsubscribe. Happened to me actually 2 days in a row. It happened yesterday and today. I go to cancel subscription to a security service yesterday. Gone. No, it's not anywhere. I had to put on my, as I like to say, my Indiana Jones hat and try to find this cancellation feature somewhere. Oh gosh. I try to cancel my subscription to the newspaper today. They force you to call.
Yep.
You cannot cancel online. And something we call, and this is a mild version of it, but we call it a roach motel. It's a dark pattern. Mm-hmm. When somebody asks you to do something that's not ethical, because UX people were behind that design.
Oh, yeah.
They were tied into it. They were actually especially all you new folks that don't realize it. Oh, I want to be in UX. Are you really ready to police things? Because that's part of what we do. We have to police things from a position of ethics. And when you see somebody doing something that's unethical, it is our job. We are ethically responsible. I just did a talk too. Jonathan, you know about this. I did a talk 3 weeks ago for an organization in Texas called UX and the Good Doctor, where I paralleled the Hippocratic Oath, because we don't have today in UX, we do not have a code of ethics that the entire discipline can operate by. We simply do not.
Yeah.
And I, as a theory, or as a hypothesis, I should say, I threw out, let's look at what the doctors have to do with the Hippocratic Oath and parallel that, because I could see UX equivalents to every step of the Hippocratic Oath.
Right.
And so I did the whole talk to talk about that. Well, somebody asks you to do a dark pattern, you could push back and you could have something to stand on. We need something to stand on because dark patterns have been on the rise. I said UX became under siege in 2011. Dark patterns are now extremely common in user experiences because a lot of the people doing the UX work refuse to push back.
Yeah.
They love their checks so much that they are willing to violate, even though there's no documented code of ethics. There's somebody know you can't just, we're going to let them sign up, but we're not going to make it apparent how to get out of this.
Right.
And I can't remember what. One company, nameless company, but somebody's going to figure out who I'm talking about, where you hit the wrong button one day. You just went and visited the wrong part of this company's site. The next thing you know, you're getting an email welcoming you to their music service. That was a hint. Somebody's going to catch what I'm talking about when I say that. You inadvertently sign up for their music service eventually, or apparently, and so you get an email welcoming you. But then when you go, I didn't sign up for this. So you go and you try to get out, dark patterns, you go to try to get out, you can't. And every step of the cancellation process is ambiguous because the goal is that you will actually re-enroll.
Yeah.
Or cancel the cancellation process. UX people are supposed to be on the front line to keep this from happening, to make experiences streamlined. And so with the process potentially of licensing, it holds us to an ethical standard similar to what you see in accounting, to what you see in the legal world, to what you see in the medical world, to what you see in the plumbing world. We don't have to get as deep as some of those other high profile positions. There are a lot of other occupancies in the world today that hold their practitioners to a high standard. And today we do not in UX.
Right.
We do not. And that's bad. That's bad for us, which is another reason why our positions a lot of the time are going to the unqualified.
Yeah, it's very bad and on many, many fronts, right? So one of the things that make it really bad is right now you probably feel helpless at times, right? When you're being kind of backed up against a wall. Yep. You don't feel like you have a community that can support you either, which is not really, conducive to a really strong community. So with the tables turned, having a license, that changes things. And that allows us to sort of come together and strengthen each other together by saying, hey, look, this is unethical and this doesn't make sense. This is harming people. And I think a lot of reasons why people don't even understand what you just said, which is really important. I want to reiterate it and highlight it. What you said was it is your job. And it is your job, because when you are creating software products, whatever kind of products you're creating, a product on the web, a product on a mobile phone, you are pushing that out. You are the creator. Yep. Therefore, whoever is consuming your creation experience, that person is relying and trusting that you're going to do them good. Yep. Right? Because they paid for your product. They're really interested in using it, and they're trusting you to do the right thing. And when you don't do the right thing, now you've broken the code of ethics. And by the way, I can give you a link to ours. We do have an oath that's similar to the Hippocratic Oath. Our board members have an oath they have to swear to. We do have codes of ethics as well. So we understand that clearly, and you hit the nail on the head. And I think it's time that folks understand the levels of responsibility they have in the work that they output.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just made me think about something else too. Because somebody's thinking now, okay, I hear what you guys are saying. You told me about the story of AMBOD. You've talked about what the value prop is. You basically have talked about why a person would want to be licensed. How would employers feel about all this?
That's funny.
I could get a license, but where's that? I mean, we're in the beginning stages of it, but it's a fair question.
That's a very fair question. We use a metaphor. So if you're listening to this through headphones, you're going to have to do a little bit of imagination work. But go ahead and just see in your mind's eye a triangle, right? Just these are different facets almost of a diamond, right? One of the things that you have to remember is when you put out products, you are responsible to who? You're responsible to your customer, the person consuming your experience. And you're also responsible to yourself, which would later become us if you get licensed by us. But the third person there is your employer. So we get that. That is your facet of experiential output of your work, right? Those are the people you're beholden to. And when you think about employers, it's funny you asked that because people have asked that a lot. And one of the benefits of being a licensed member is you're going to get access to a lot of cool data. One of our data points was last year that we actually did poll 111 folks. These are people that are VPs or chief of design, more at the exec C level. Hey, what would you do if you had two resumes? One person was licensed and vetted by a third party. That means we went through with the fine-tooth comb and made sure that this person is legitimately skilled and has the competencies to pull off the job. We even gave them a rating, which tells you that they're a senior or principal level. And then you have someone else, same looking resume. The only difference is a license. And unequivocally, hand over fist, they all said, hey, why would I not choose the guy that has the third party validation? That makes total sense to me. And that was not a shocker because we knew going in that they were going to side with that, because the way we posed the question, we broke down, what you were getting, what skills you were getting, and how the scoring works. It looks just like an SAT score that tells you, is this person, what did they score in information architecture? You can expect them to be very good or okay at visual design, but extremely good at systems design, right? So yeah, what do employers think? What do hiring managers think? I think they want this. I don't see any pushback from them when it comes to that.
Awesome. You just mentioned something else to me. I think that's going to be like easily a game changer. I mean, this whole thing's a game changer to me. But something you just mentioned hit me really hard when you mentioned a person can validate themselves as a senior. A person can validate themselves as a principal. At one time, the levels of seniority were clear. Matter of fact, when I started working in UX full-time, I went from doing freelance to doing part-time UX work during the day to full-time UX work. And at the time I started doing full-time UX work, I was still really functioning as a mid-level person, truthfully. I wasn't functioning as in 2005, I was functioning as a mid-level person, and I had been doing the work for 10 years. I also learned really quickly that you could not get a senior title. I didn't know a senior UX person in 2008. And everybody I knew was tax sharp. I didn't know one person that had senior in their title. And I didn't get senior in my title until 2013. Matter of fact, I take that back. I was an experience lead. In 2012, 2013, and I got my senior. So, lead is at the top of that echelon, but you go from 0 to 3 years as entry level was the way I always understood it. 3 years to 6 is mid-level, really 7. Anything from 7 to 10 around in there was where you find true seniors. And then you go into lead, you go into a principal, you go into staff. You have to have double digits in the field to be considered a viable actual senior across the board, because where you work determines who you are as well. It would be great to see, because now somebody's been on their job for 6 months and they're labeled as a senior. I have talked to people. Weird. I have talked to people who claim to be leads, and I'm going, wait a minute. I talked to a person once on LinkedIn. I said, how can you be a lead? We had a private conversation. I wasn't going to out them in front of everybody. I said, how can you be a lead when you've only been doing the work for literally 6 months? And they said, well, because I'm I'm the only person on my team, so I'm the lead. I said, no, you're not. They said, well, you should have said you were a lead. No, I'm not interested in misrepresenting who I am. And then the person got real silent after that. They didn't have anything else to say. There is such ambiguity with titles. I mean, I see a senior job and I applied for it because a senior is anybody with over 10 years.
Right.
So I applied for it. And then they say, they basically, oh, thanks, but no thanks. Well, we're going to talk to other people who are more closely aligned with, that old stupid cookie cutter response that people get.
Oh, gosh.
But why didn't I don't have to have a top. Not, number one, I would like to be paid. And we can talk about what the titles are after that. But the funny thing is, there's such ambiguity in titles today. This is a major game changer because it can help. Not only am I licensed, but I'm a licensed principal practitioner.
Oh yeah, and that's the other. I mean, there's lots of benefits. I'm sure you'll be digging into those as you hear this podcast, and you'll see them plenty yourself. But that is another benefit, is that we have that defined. We have a clear definition of the time that it takes. We believe that the timetable is kind of at an intersection of time and service and levels of skills. Yes. And that has all scientifically been broken down. I think that the problem with the titles might be coming from, frankly, if someone wants to track someone, they're going to change and give them whatever title they want. So that's just a bit of HR, behind the scenes magic that's not even real, right? So I think that's a disgrace. We want to put an end to that. If you want to find out what you are and get an evaluation, we can do that for you at American Board of Design and Research. And we can even give you access to the table chart. Just sign up and get an account, and we'll give you access to the table chart where you can understand that clearly, where you should be. So that's crazy. There has been a definition. HR knows about it. I think they're hiding it because they want to bolster up the title to pay someone less to get someone in less experience and more junior. I know the tricks that they're doing. The tricks they're doing. I don't think we need to get into that, but that has nothing to do with reality. It takes about 8 to 10 years to become a senior, and that's just the fact.
Yeah. And it's also funny too. And I always when we talk about this subject, I like to throw this out there, how that I've seen people, they've been working, say 5 years, they claim to be a senior, this, that, and the other, whatever they claim to be. What you are, your experience is a number. You're not 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, 8 years, 12 years, 15. I just told you, I was doing UX work for 10 years, but I was functioning as a mid-level person. Why was that? It was because of where I had worked. We're going to wrap up our session with Jonathan Bowman here. We're going to play the second part next week, but dynamite conversation, great information coming forth. I really love the guests that come on the show, the things that they have to share with people. And I really hope that this stuff helps to vault everybody forward. Be committed today. I mean, it's a weird, the landscape of UX today is really odd. It's very strange. Hiring is strange. Practice is strange. Visual designers are taking over, but there are some of us out here who are willing to still embrace pure UX no matter what's going on. So no matter what's going on, folks, there is hope. Please don't hear what we're saying and think that there's no hope. There is hope. And so I hope that you're willing, as long as there are people like us that are willing to still embrace pure UX, we have hope. So please be one of those folks. So we will play the next part, the conclusion of this conversation next week. But until then, again, it's time to sign off. So this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.